Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 95 of Discourse in Magic with Alex Pandrea. This episode is action-packed with all about how Alex learned to produce magic and as well how he learned about how to make playing cards before the wave that recently came and all about learning to create content. You're going to love the episode, and I encourage you to stay till the end because in the outro, I will let you know about the contest where you can win some amazing, amazing prizes. So here it is, episode 95 of Discourse in Magic with the Alex Pandrea. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah.
My name is Tyler.
And we are here with a very special guest. You absolutely know who he is. He is Blue Crown Magic, and he is Alex Pandrea. Alex, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
We're doing really well. It's a beautiful, beautiful cold day in Toronto today.
It's gray outside and freezing.
Nice. Just the way I like it.
Exactly, just the way I like it. So let's dive in. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get started into Magic?
Right. So it's funny because I just filmed a YouTube video on this very topic. So I'm fresh. I'm fresh on it. When I was about 5 years old, a clown came to my birthday party, and I realized that my grandmother was actually babysitting his kids. So the clown was actually the father of the kids that my grandmother was babysitting in disguise, which was just magic in itself when I realized that. And he would come over, and every time he'd pick up the kids from my house, he would put some sponge balls in my hand and like shove a silk in his hand and make it disappear. And so that was I think my first exposure to actual magic effects. But then moving along, where you have to start getting more and more serious about whether you want to do this or not. I saw like World's Greatest Magic. I tried to find the magic shop. I found one in Queens. So I lived in New York all my life, basically until recently. And at that point, I found a very obscure magic shop at the back of a costume, like a party store. And I met one of the first influences I had in magic, Jonathan Price, who's now a heart surgeon, out of all people.
Whoa!
So he went from card tricks
steady hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, good with your fingers.
Exactly. He went to teaching me, card tricks to taking out people's hearts and replacing them. So he was my first mentor in magic. And then from there, I just I went to the big city where more magic shops were. So like Tannins was there, and I met other people, and it just sort of spawned from there.
That's awesome. And continuing along that journey, how did that sort of translate into, what you do now? When did you start, creating your own effects? Was that sort of inspired by other people's creation, or did it come from like your need for there being things that didn't exist?
Well, so I don't really consider myself super creative when it comes to like creating original magic. I never did, but I loved to create when I was little, only for the fact that when I'd go to Tannins and everything, my mom, she'd get me a few things, but I had a whole array of magic and things that I still would want it to perform, but just couldn't afford at that time to get. And so what I decided to do is sort of create my own versions of those effects. So I would makeshift a lot of gimmicks, and I would start just sitting in my room and thinking of, okay, how could this be done? And then I'd just create it, and something might have come out of it, something not. But at the end of the day, it just got me into that routine of like putting things together and thinking about creating magic. But I don't think it was a big part of my early magic days. I think more it was about learning as much as I could, rather than creating as much as I could. And that's always the basis of everything. I think that's important to learn as much as you can first, because then the creativity comes from your history, your knowledge of everything that you learned. So I was more interested in
you
learning.
have a larger tool belt.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than you creating something and you show your friend, you say, look what I created, and he goes, yeah, that was published 40 years ago, and you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
And that comes from being well studied in the art and knowing what exists and what what stuff has come before you.
Exactly. And like for me, I was only doing it for myself, creating for myself. And I was actually on purpose creating things like, and I was like 13 years old, creating things that were in the magic shops that were like, a few $100s. I
Right.
was like, well, how do I make this ring flight gimmick? So I went to the
Right.
99-cent store and I bought a keychain wallet that looked the same. I drilled cut a little hole in it, and I found a reel that was like, again, $1. I
Yeah.
put the reel inside, and then I came up with a ring flight gimmick that worked just as fine. But I was 13 years old, and I for like a few bucks, I
Yeah.
made $100 item. So that was like my creation at the time. And as far as like creating original material, that really didn't start until I actually got in the scene and hanging out with more and more magicians to see what sort of possibilities were out there, what they were creating, because I was just really just stuck on the VHS tapes that I had. That's what I saw in the magic
Right.
shops, so I wasn't exposed to like the array of possibilities with magic, especially card magic.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So you mentioned, um, having someone do very classic magic, and that sort of being your introduction to it. Like sponge balls and silks, and you mentioned ring flight. But I mainly know you as a card guy. So do you want to talk a little bit about the sort of mental shift moving into focusing mainly on close up with cards?
Yeah, so I've had a few shifts. I'm 30 years old right now, so my career, I say career, probably started at like, well, let's go back to the Tannins days where I was 13 years old, and my main focus was, I guess, just you go buy a trick, you learn it, you perform it. There was nothing more than that.
And then
Mr.
you go buy
Professor learned
another
this
one.
trick,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you go buy another one, and then you just have trick, and here's for my next trick, and for my next trick, and I'd perform
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
whomever. And then I guess being more like when I got to high school or junior high, I would say, I was more and more enthralled of like the street magic type of vibe, the very visual, flashy. Look at me, I'm the cool guy, right?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be the cool guy in school, right? Because I guess I wasn't very cool. Um,
Yeah,
Definitely magic is not
Magic is-
inherent.
yeah.
Well, I guess it just
I think we all made that mistake, being like, "I'm going to become popular with card tricks," and then we're like, "Oh no, I'm the card trick
well, I
kid
think
now."
that's in a realization to everybody to take a step back and look in the mirror and go, you know what? I'm not even popular. I need something. I need something, right? So that's really where it started for me because, maybe I had a crush on a girl, or maybe I wanted to be, hanging out at the cool table at the lunch, at the lunch table,
Mhm.
or something to that extent. So I had to do something to sort of stand out. So I brought my magic to school, and at that time it was very just in your face, like David Blaine type stuff. I would do all of David Blaine's material basically, like and I'd add the
Yeah.
fire wallet to it, and bringing the fire wallet to school, not a very good idea. I got suspended from school one time.
For magic tricks,
For-
No,
like
for
that.
technically for trying to burn the school down. This is what the lady
Right.
said, because I would
my
always try to get
goodness.
in with the teachers in being on their side by showing them a trick here or there, right?
Yeah.
So when I got the fire wallet, I was super excited about it. So I brought it to school. I brought my lighter fluid, did it all up, and it was going good for a few weeks. And then I did it one time when I was caught in the hallway, being either late to class or something, or skipping class or something like that. And one of the teachers, who apparently was just really not into it, I lit the fire wallet, and I go, no, 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 look, light the fire wallet. And she
Yeah.
freaked out, man. She freaked out. She literally grabbed me, like you see, like it'd be like a cartoon where they grab you by the
Yeah.
collar and bring you to the
Lapels,
principal's
yeah.
office. That's exactly what it was. And at that point, it was one of these fire wallets that you don't open up all the way, so they had to take pictures of the evidence. So they cracked open the fire wallet and they just cracked it open. They didn't care, and they put it down. They like scanned it or whatever they did. I was like, "What the hell?" They called my mom. My mom had to come into the school and literally explain
Oh my
to them
goodness.
how she actually bought it from me, and it's just a magic trick, and he's not an arsonist. So
Yes, I know about that. I was the one who bought it. Like-
so I spent a few days and I was suspended, and then I had to do like detention every day after for like a week. But I got through it with magic. So like my detention teacher, or whatever detention person, just literally had me there doing tricks. So it all came around full circle.
And getting suspended for doing magic, I'm sure really solidified you as the bad boy there of magic.
Well, I think so, because I used to then I had a really period where I wore all black with like fired dice on my shirts, and it was on the if
Yeah,
anybody
you
knows,
were a 13-year-old
yeah.
magician. There's no other
Well, if
way. Like
anybody
that's
knows
just how it goes.
Magic Ballet was one of my first idols in Magic, and he works at Tannen's, long pony hair, ponytail, leather jacket,
Yeah,
Harley Davidson dude, right? So he would actually take me out to the bars in New York. I'd come in with my mom every Saturday, and he'd like, he hits on all the girls and everything. I thought that was kind of cool until he like started hitting on my mom. But I realized through that I would get some free stuff. So we would go out, and he would actually take me. I was 13, 14, 15 at this time. Take me out to New York City to the bars he knew the bouncers at, and I would see all this magic that he was doing, and he's like, "All right, let's go pick up some girls." And I was like, "Using magic?" I was like, "What?
like,
Is that
yeah.
possible?" So I still remember it to this day. So this was my Magic Ballet phase where I'd wear like the leather jacket and put on the rings and stuff. And I think I'd be cool
So you
like
go
him.
together, they'd be like, "Are you guys brothers?" You're like, "No, no, no."
So he'd go to the bar and he'd be like, "Okay, pick the hottest girl in the bar." And I still remember this to this day. And I picked one girl, right, that was just not. She was gorgeous, and if I see her today on the street, I'd recognize her. I mean, obviously, if she didn't age in the 15 years that have been since this story, but yeah, I was just like, yeah, there's no way he's gonna get her. That's what I thought in my mind. And he went up there. He did like 3 tricks, boom, 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 this sort of style. And it was just amazing. And she came up to him afterwards. Please take my number. I was like, this is not possible. Like, what did you pay her? Like, so that really got me into this phase of doing this type of magic. So it started off by just doing tricks, have no meaning to it. Now I wanted to be the cool kid, and I wanted just to show off, basically. Then growing up, and when I hit college, and I was more thinking about, when I was in college, I got married very early, and I became more of a serious person, right? So I matured really quickly, I think, in my early 20s. I got married at 19. So, yeah,
Wow.
so through this time, I wanted to think more about, like, sort of life and what it means and things like that. So I started, like, hanging out with magicians and thinking more about magic, instead of just the flashy type of let me just do a trick and impress you. I wanted to create something, I guess, more and have more meaning. And I guess that's where it really came out of creating sort of my own material and doing something with it. So I started doing shows in college. I started doing more like gigs and here and there, birthday parties and that sort of stuff. And then I realized, what else can we do with magic? And all these companies were there that I admired the people behind, and I wanted to do something similar. So that's sort of how it came to now, what is me running a company and putting out tricks and things like that. Um,
That's
yeah, and
awesome.
going forward, I mean, this is another phase now that I reached about 2 years ago when I started traveling and doing lectures. This is another phase that you go through. So my overall point of this is that magic, just like anything in life, has stages. What you thought was right and what you really had a lot of feeling towards in one period of your life. And that doesn't have to go with magic, it could go with anything, right? You think about 10 years from now, you probably will have a different opinion on life and things that are important to you rather than
Of course.
today. And that's different from 10 years prior, right? So
hmm
I think this is just the natural evolution of any sort of art form or hobby or things that you're interested in. They go through phases and you evolve from that. So.
Of course. So let's dive in a little bit and talk about Blue Crown. I want you to give us a little bit of detail about what it is, but also, there's a lot of people at home. Everyone is so obsessed with the release of magic and the starting of a magic company and all of this stuff. And I want to know if you have advice for them, whether you're like, yeah, you should all do it, or whether you're like, yeah, it's not all the glory that it looks like, or whatever the case may be. So tell us a little bit about it, and then give us some advice for people who want to start their own magic company where they release things.
Yeah, so I think that you really have to be passionate first about it. So the Blue Crown was started in 2011, where I was in college and I hated college. I didn't want anything to do with it, right? And throughout my whole, it took me 5 years because I didn't go the first year and a half or 2 years. I just didn't go. And and throughout this whole process, I thought about, I don't want to get a job. I had one time I had a job for one day in the top of the Empire State Building. It was like the 80th floor, and I had to like file papers for like a law firm, right? And that lasted literally a day because I went in. filed some papers, and I look at myself. I go, "What the hell am I doing with my life?" So I decided then. I think that was the day on the subway ride back. I said, "I'm going to start a magic company," and that was just because I wanted to
Mhm,
do a company. So I just worked for myself and do the
mhm,
things that I loved, And like I said before, looking back at the magic companies out there, I really, honestly, maybe it was just a cocky way of thinking, but I sat back and I go, you know what, I could do this. I could do this better, you know.
for sure.
And I think that's also important. You always have to be confident in yourself, and to thinking that no matter what you do, you're going to succeed at it, because then,
And just to quickly interject, I always think that's such an interesting motivating factor for people. Some people are like, wow, it's worth a shot. And there's different things. I know for me, like going pro and doing magic, it was watching a really bad magician and saying like, if he can suck, I can suck. Like I'll be better than him, but like clearly there's no, like I could do that too. So it's just interesting that what motivated you into it is say like, yeah, I could do this better than they could.
yeah, and I felt this motivation of just not wanting to get a desk job, like I
Yeah.
went through it for a whole like 6 hours or whatever it was that day. That was enough for me. And I really felt that, in my head I was like, well, they could do this better. I would do this if I was them. And throughout my last, I think, 2 years of college, I planned this whole out in my head. And I still have like the mock-ups of 2 years before the Blue Crown was launched. I'd make sketches of crowns and magic effects and playing cards, right, which would initially be the crown deck to
Yeah.
begin with, and on my college like notebook. So starting the company, this is what I tell everybody. A lot of people want to do a lot of things and not put in the work, and because they see the successful people, that they don't really, they don't put in all the effort that it takes to do something, because they already got to a level. So a lot of times the story behind what you see as a success story, quote unquote, is a lot of work put into it that really doesn't get you anywhere for a while, and you have to stick that out. So for 6 months, I remember, before I even started, between 6 months and, let's say, like a year, I'd say maybe a little bit less, I would teach myself how to edit, film and edit. I would teach myself how to make a website, create it, put everything that you need, photography, get a camera, start taking pictures, learn how to, just everything about it, everything about putting up a website, because I literally did not know anything. And the first DVD that we
Mhm.
filmed was with Magic Ballet, was Centrifugal, where is
Right.
take a quarter and float it in midair, which is one of the coolest things, one of the most visual things. So we put together a DVD, and the first time I filmed it, which was like 6 months prior to releasing the site, I went and I bought a camera that weekend, and I did a makeshift, like, a shoulder pad stand for it with my mom. I remember we took, we looked on, we saw that it was like a few $100s to put your camera on a steady cam on your shoulder and whatever. And I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? I bet you we can make this ourselves. So
Using
You
that
the
original like
magic shop
magic.
approach.
Yeah.
exactly. So we went to Home Depot and we bought like PVC pipes, and we cut them up, and we put them all together, and I still have it to this day, back in my grandma's like base, like, storage sort of room.
Yeah.
And it's like all falling apart, but it's literally through PVC pipes, and we put the attachment on the top. We spray painted it black, put a little padding at the shoulder, and we put the camera on top of it. So literally, this was the first time that I was actually, you know, ready to film a DVD. And we went out into the city and we did it. And then I learned to edit. Right? I didn't know how to even export it into the program. I was like, well, first of all, what do I edit in? I downloaded Final Cut. I
Yeah.
got Final
Yeah.
Cut, and I learned it all myself. So 6 months, it was literally night and day. I remember going to sleep at 7, 8 in the morning, after just watching like either YouTube videos or other tutorials on everything that I needed to do. Photoshop. In the beginning, I created all the covers for, and took the pictures and everything that I needed to do. So I did that mostly all myself. So yeah, for 6 months, and this is what I tell people, that you have to really put in the time and effort, and don't expect everything overnight, because that's not going to happen. So that's phase one, and
Yeah.
like creating is what I went through in creating the company. And I think I was lucky enough to get in the right time. I don't think I did anything better necessarily than what people are doing, like the effects or the playing cards. It was nothing super like revolutionary about it, but I think I got in the right time. And putting out playing cards really took the company to the next level, because at that time there was like three companies putting out playing cards, right? Not,
Mm-hmm.
now every day a new deck design is out on Kickstarter or something,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but at
exactly.
that time, it was literally three or four companies tops that were working with USPC printing playing cards, and it took me again like a few months to even get that relationship with them, because they wouldn't have just printed for
Mm-hmm.
anybody. Now
Yeah.
it's literally, like my dog could print playing cards, so
Yeah,
they
he's
don't
like,
care.
can you afford it? We'll print it,
Yeah, they
right?
don't care. So, but the first Crown deck, like I remember posting up the picture, and I really believe um, that it was the whole um, I guess the teasing period of a playing card release really started. I remember when I put out the first Crown deck, because I announced that it's coming, but I didn't have a prototype. I didn't have anything. So what I did is I took a deck that I had. It was a B deck, and I put it like this on the table, and I put the lights behind it so I would create a shadow. And I literally created a teaser photo using a deck that was not the Crown deck, right? So I put that up with the date, and that created a super buzz. So the first and I didn't have money to create a lot of playing cards, so I did the minimum at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I created the minimum amount that you can with USPC at that time, and we put them up, and we sold out in 3 days, right? So we put them up that
Wow.
Friday, and by Monday, they were all gone. So I thought, man, I was gonna have these for like at least 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the case. So I doubled down, and I made the red deck, and the red deck, um, which was double the amount, sold out in 2 hours on the
Wow.
site,
That's
which at
crazy.
that point beat any record, because I knew the numbers at the time, and I had friends in the
Yeah.
industry that beat the record at that time for the most amount of playing cards sold in a certain amount of time. And then I doubled down again on the green, and I put all the money that we had and every profit and everything into the green ones, and we made triple the amount of the first ones, and they sold out in 22 minutes on the site,
Oh my
which
goodness.
Oh my lord.
literally kills every record in the book. So I'm not saying this to be arrogant at all, but I just want people to know like the history behind um, playing cards and the company, and sort of how we got to where we are. And it was really about that time in building the hype and doing everything, and just working methodically and putting everything together correctly, so you have a successful result. So my um, advice to people that start to want to do the same thing is work hard at it, and think about what you're going to do, instead of just putting up a half-assed design of playing cards or something on Kickstarter, and then it doesn't get funded. Or if it does, I know a lot of people that have done Kickstarters that have funded it 100%, and they lose money because they don't take into account all of the sort of numbers behind it, the business aspect of it, the
For
shipping,
sure.
the fulfillment, the how
Yeah.
we're going to do this. We used to ship, it was me, my ex-wife, and my mom. We shipped out thousands and thousands of playing cards through my apartment, my sixth floor apartment in New York. And we
Wow.
would go to the supermarket and get like um
Envelopes or
no the
whatever.
the carrot the carts, the carts.
Oh
So
yeah,
we take
yeah.
two of those cards, and the guy who delivers the stuff at the supermarket said, "Look, we need to move a lot of stuff. We need these cards. We'll give it back to you after the weekend." So we take the cards up to our apartment and pack everything, print the labels at my apartment, and ship everything literally from my sixth floor apartment in New York. And that was the start of it. And that's everybody now wants to just put up something and make a lot of money, let's say, and not really have to worry about the ins and outs of it. But you
For
could tell
sure.
definitely
And
the work behind something successful rather than something that's half-assed.
yeah, and just to put in perspective, like couldn't be any more grueling work than filing papers for someone at the beginning. But this is instead, your company and your thing. And, like it's the same thing. You're stuffing things in boxes and shipping them out, right? That's not beautiful work, but not all of this industry is like roses and daisies or
No,
whatever, like
not at all.
it's about putting in the work, right? So instead of doing it for someone else, you got an opportunity to do it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is how you like appreciate it more, I guess.
hmm so then Blue Crown sort of really grew more and more into what it is today. And I want to sort of zoom forward into today, where you've really dove into the social media, specifically Instagram and YouTube, making some really interesting videos. And, it really adds some context for people who start YouTubing like a month ago and they're like, why aren't my videos so great? But the truth is you've been doing it for you've been learning how to record and shoot and edit videos for much longer than 2 weeks. Like it's been a very long time before you started with vlogging, really, or making a channel where you are talking to the camera and making beautiful photos on Instagram and things like that. So can you talk a little bit about diving into the social media world?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting journey for me, at least the last few months, because I never really, I'd have a YouTube channel through my company, and we put up trailers and everything, but it wasn't really getting traction, and so social media really doesn't get much traction for the person doing it unless they put out really creative, original content that people would want, that they would see value in
Mm-hmm.
it, right? So I realized that when I started putting up, I was so bored of Instagram, and I started putting up cool pictures of, I realized that with anything that I put up that is like a scenery or like somewhere where I am, it'd get no engagement. And if I put up just a deck of cards, it could be the ugliest picture of me holding a deck of cards, I'd get like triple the amount of likes, right? So I realized
Wow.
that that was where the engagement was. So I started, and this came after my touring. After I did a bunch of lectures over the last 2 3 years, I realized that I really like to talk about my opinions on good magic versus bad magic versus what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and I like to
For sure.
express myself, because in the beginning I was very conscientious of not offending anybody with my opinion. But I
Right.
realized more and more I said it, more people were agreeing with me, and I was like, hey, maybe I do have something to say. So I would put my sort of thoughts and theory into my Instagram posts about, um, you know, how to do a move well versus how not to do it. Something like that. The 3 tips to, sort of the same approach that like the clickbait ads like would have on
Yeah,
Facebook or
For
something.
sure.
top
Yeah,
five
exactly.
how tos, all that
So
sort of
I
stuff.
started
Yeah.
playing around with that because I was actually here in Bermuda in the summertime, working on a project, and I had a lot of time off or in the daytime where just sitting by the pool and things like that. So I was like, all right, let's do something that's worthwhile. So that got a lot of traction, and a lot of people were saying, do a YouTube channel, YouTube channel. And I was super against it at the time because I was like, oh, I'm not going to pimp myself out on YouTube. Just,
Mhm.
what's the point? Um, but I did realize that the future is in the social media, and getting the fans a place where they can learn consistently good stuff is important, because
Mhm.
if I weren't doing it, then somebody else would do it, and probably, in my opinion,
Exactly.
Do it
do it
poorly.
poorly.
Yeah.
You see certain things taught on YouTube, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Which
Mhm.
is it really doesn't make a difference either way. But people will go and learn it incorrectly.
That's where they learn.
So I
Exactly.
figured if they're going to learn something, at least I'll try to put in as much thought as possible into what I am feeling comfortable doing on YouTube. So I started a YouTube channel, and my friends Xavier Spade and Chris Ramsey pushed me. Also, they're like, yeah, just do it. I'll put you up on my channel, whatever.
Mhm.
So at this point now, we grew a lot. Like I'm actually very happy of how it is. But the main point is just to get the attraction of building magic. I don't look to make money off of YouTube at all, and I don't look to promote necessarily. I teach things that recently last week I taught something that I released on the Blue Crown. and I released through
Mm-hmm.
a paid version of it, so now you could get it for free. So my whole intention is to just give to the community something that they could be like, you know what, this guy is he does good stuff, quality material. So then
Yeah.
when I do put out something, they're behind me, right? So we're building a whole community of people that want to learn, and I think
Yeah, it also there's a lot of when you give a lot away for free, you get this sort of respect between you and your audience, and then when you release something that, they have to pay for, it's not as black and white of them being like, I'm paying just for the method, and then the method might let them down. Not saying you put out bad quality material, but they're sort of like, I don't know, is that move worth $20 or whatever? But in their mind now, it's, I get to learn this awesome move and support Alex. Sure, I'll give him $20,
Yeah, of
right?
course, and it's going nowadays towards, let's get away from like the big companies, right? And this is like all the business. I mean, when you have a small business, it's
Mm-hmm.
always more. It feels good to support them rather than the big conglomerate, right? So like we have this
For sure.
misconception
Right.
of magic being big businesses, right? And like the big companies being like so huge that you shouldn't support them, which is like not the case at all. But when Chris Ramsey comes on the scene and says, "Hey guys, this is to support me," then this is between you and him. Nothing else in the way, no like trick advertising, no this, no that. He just sits in front of the camera and he
Mm-hmm.
tells it as it
Hmm.
is, which is very noble and very like I think he's doing such a good job of it. So
For
I wanted
sure.
that transparency that will ultimately be for my company, because I represent my company. I want that transparency and I want people to know exactly what we're doing and give them as much value as we can. Like recently we put up, and I don't think anybody in the history of magic has done this, where I had like 10 of my paid DVDs releases that I've done over the last years, and it totaled up like $300. And I said, well, $300 is a lot to spend on however good the material is. Maybe people just don't have $300 to spend, and this is a fair statement.
Mm-hmm.
So we put it up, and not for $100, not for 50. Put it up for $19, and a lot of people now could take advantage of learning my material at this price, so that going forward I create a bigger audience and more people are behind me because now they know my material
For sure.
that they wouldn't have known because I'm selling each individual one for $20, $30. So putting 10 together for
Mm-hmm.
20, now this is something that no other magic company would do. But I sit back and I say, you know what, like it's not about the money for me. It's about doing something that I actually care about, and I really do care about magic, and the people learning it, so that I don't have to watch horrible magic on TV and in the mainstream. Like I want to try to be a part of building this community up to something that is respectable rather than laughed at.
Yeah, that's
100%.
that's huge. If you're releasing what you believe to be quality, it would make sense that you want the majority of magicians to be doing quality stuff. And furthermore, it builds the relationship with you. And even further than that, if they get these tools that, really better them as magicians, next thing you know, they have $300 to drop on magic. Like it's worth investing in that because they've started their own personal magic, businesses as performers.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I just think it's important to like do everything with a passion and not a hidden agenda, which could you could see
For
through
sure.
that. You could see through that when people release things or try to scam you, if you will, into giving you their money.
100%. And just to reflect on that, through this podcast, like we are over 90 episodes into this by the time that this is released, and they're all free, like not even asking for anything. There's not even a donate button. When we did a private release of a product to our own community as like a little bit of a beta test. But, this isn't about making money. This is about sharing good magic. We started this because we wanted to discuss theory and share conversations that happen at like 3 o'clock in the morning at hotel rooms at conventions to the general public. And we felt everyone was releasing magic and we wanted to talk about theory and talk business and talk about things of that nature. So I think it's really all about, what you want to put in the world, and the income comes later. I think, like it comes after you share. And especially now versus, like 10 years ago when you're talking about, your story, like there's so much free stuff now that it's very hard for someone to dive into the market for a first time with a piece of paid material. People don't know who you are unless it knocks their face off with impossibility and gets some sort of virality to it. Like, no one's going to invest in you if they don't know who you are as a person, that they haven't seen your videos or your content or whatever the case may be. So I think that it's definitely a good piece of advice for people who are trying to start their own thing, to not try to start with trying to make a buck, but instead to start with putting in the work and to just enjoy putting out content, working on content, just getting better at all of the different things. You don't want the first release that you do to be the first time that you've ever shot something or you've ever, learned how to use any of these. You want people to have trust in that the material is going to be
Yeah,
good.
you have to put a lot of investment in yourself first before you get anything back from it. And this is not just in magic; it's with anything. If you look up any startups, I like to uh, dive myself into the business world and entrepreneurs and everything. The most successful people never started out, how do I monetize this? How do I make the most money out of this? Because when their initial thought is that, it's very clear, and it's just not successful, right? Like you look at the most successful things, Facebook, right? Facebook didn't make any money forever, right? Did he want to sell
Yeah.
out for $1 billion? No, because he saw the bigger picture and he really felt passionate about something, right? So this is just a small example of how you should not, I get offers all the time of, let's do this, let's do that, and then the first conversation is, all right, so what kind of money do I get? Can I get a payment? Can I do this? Can I do that?
Right.
And this is not even in magic. This is in a lot of businesses where I run another business outside of magic, and it's, you can tell the people, right, that will get to somewhere where the passion, and you always have to have this in life. You always have to have a driving factor, a motivation that really keeps you waking up every day and like saying, I'm going to start the day and do something today, rather than just like getting up and thinking how you're going to make $5-10, right? And that's not really a
Right.
motivation, I don't think, to do something worthwhile. And the most worthwhile things done in life, whether they be in magic or otherwise, have been fueled by the passion and the motivation, of people wanting to do things that they care about.
For sure. One of the things that I want to dive in is some of the other, real skills that you have along the lines of, Blue Crown, and along the lines of, producing and creating magic, that people who are listening who are trying to or want to do it themselves can take advice from. So the first that I want to touch on is lecturing. A lot of magicians, because their main context for magic is watching lecturers come to their city, that's their big dream for magic, right? Is to lecture for like 30 old people or whatever. But I'm being silly, but like to lecture at magic shops and around the world and stuff like that. So what would your advice, words of wisdom, words of warning be for people whose goal it is to start lecturing?
So, a very interesting story for me. It has changed my life over the last 3 years. So, going back to the days I was married, like I was said very early, I was married for 7 years. And come 2013, things didn't work out. We got divorced. All good now. We're still great friends. But I decided to take a step forward in my life because I was stuck in New York ever since I could remember, right? And I literally threw out everything in my apartment. I sold my car. I had 2 cars. I sold my cars. I got rid of my apartment in New York, and I went a full-on gypsy. and and I literally packed a suitcase and I set up about 5 lectures, right, during the course of my um, sort of getting away from the real world. And because I wanted to travel, I wanted to see the world, I wanted to do things for me now that I had the
Yeah.
opportunity to. So what turned from 5 lectures, it turned into, right now, as this podcast is airing, 112 cities around the world.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
it started off in Europe. And like I could literally talk about hours of my, I think I'm gonna have to write a book on this one day, of my journey through my lecture scene. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I honestly didn't. I thought it would be super fun to travel, which in retrospect, it was very cool to see and meet all the people around this whole world. Um, and that literally it changed my life. It changed the way I looked at magic, and it was like that third evolution that I was talking about. Before it was just tricks, tricks, tricks. Then it was like being the cool guy and showing off and things like that. And then getting more into the sleight of hand, and then that third phase, third, fourth phase was really putting meaning into changing somebody's lives with magic, and how do you touch them on a different level rather than just I'm going to show you a trick and try to fool you. So through
Right.
lecturing, I realized that I had a very strong passion for talking about magic and how it should be done. This is what I try to build into
Mm-hmm.
like my social media, my Instagram, my YouTube. But it started off with 5 cities. It grew European tour, Asia tour, US tour, and a lot of times you are doing it for very old people at a magic club. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
it gets to the point where because you're enthralled in this world, you see the value in it, and you see when someone comes up to you and says, "Wow, you changed the way that I think of this," and you get the
Of course.
emails and you get the messages on Facebook that you are doing, and you're surpassing your goal of just going and teaching them something.
Mm-hmm.
You become more and more involved in it. So after the first tour, I booked more tours, and I was just obsessed with traveling and meeting people and just giving them all my knowledge I could. And my lectures, they're supposed to stop at 2 hours, but I've done, like I've done 6 hour lectures, in Tokyo. I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah, lecture went on for 6 hours, and I just literally couldn't stop. And I was like the peak of it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed when I go to magic lectures. You can really tell when someone is there to make money selling their product and when they're there to
Oh,
talk magic.
For sure.
Like when they're really genuinely
it's
enjoying
horrible. Like
themselves.
to go pay for a lecture, and just have it be a dealer's demo kind of thing. And I'm not going to bring up any names, but I've
Mm-hmm.
seen myself have magicians come, and their whole lecture, one thing in the beginning, the first thing they do is they like do a color change or something. Everybody could do this. That's fine. That's fine. And then every single thing afterwards is you have to buy the product. And
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
me, this is not the way that it really should be, because then you just look like a like a like a salesperson, and the products
For
are not
sure.
all that great either. So like you're like a
Yeah.
snake oil salesperson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just to bring it back, I only joked about it being filled with like old dudes, because it feels like a real contrast against the online world. But on that same note, what ends up happening, and we've experienced this a little bit. I was just on the road at some conventions, and people came out to the conventions to meet me because they followed the podcast, and that was really crazy. And I think I brought it up to almost hint at you saying that maybe there's people who were following you online and now come and show up to these lectures who might not have been there otherwise, because they know they get an opportunity to meet somebody who has helped them so much in
Oh,
their
it's very
magic.
important. Even for me, when I was a kid, I looked up to these people that I've watched on VHS tapes. Um, Daryl was a huge inspiration. Michael Amar. I
Mm,
had the VHS tapes of these guys that I would watch every single day after school. And
mhm.
this
Yeah.
was my ritual. I would come home, I would bake cookies. I had like the little Pillsbury cookies. I'd bake the cookies by myself, and I'd put in the VHS tapes. And while eating the cookies, I would watch the VHS tapes, wash my hands, and then get to work. And from there till like my mom came home, which was nighttime,
That's
right? Because she
awesome.
worked late. She came home, and
Yeah.
I had to learn something so I can show her, right? And like my mom was like one of the
Hmm.
biggest inspirations for me and to push me forward.
Hmm.
I said this on one of the videos that I did, that she would always be there looking at my stuff and watching the things that I wanted to do, no matter how stupid they were. Um, and so yeah,
And that's actually so much big. Like I just want to highlight how important that is to have a consistent audience member, because it was about 2 months before of me doing magic before my family was like, go away. Like we were tired. We've seen the double lift already.
Hmm.
Move on.
I have a funny story that really relates to that. I would do the same thing. So I would go upstairs, I would work on magic, like isolated in my room, and then I would come down after like 5 hours and go like, it's ready, I can do it. and I would show my parents. And there's a memory that I'll never forget, where it was the first time that I was learning the classic force, and I came downstairs and I didn't know what I was doing, and I sort of arranged the cards in like a weird little pyramid in my hand where they're spread. So like one card is really outjogged, the next ones were moderately less outjogged, and the rest were in the spread. And I said to my mom, "Take a card." And she took that card, and it was at that moment that I realized that she was doing it to be nice. And I went, "Oh, okay, I got to do this for real people. I have to get out of this room." So I think that's a really good point. There's a lot of people of many different ages listening to this, and having someone that you can show your ideas to and show the things you're working on to, whether it's your parents or your friends or other magicians, or it's super important to have that kind of thing and to continue the growth, to keep you wanting to double down on this and working on this, like watching people's reactions and watching people see you get better. Like, that's why we do this. And I can only imagine the amount of magicians that don't do magic anymore because they learned a trick and then they didn't really show anybody. And then that was the trick that they learned. They went to a magic store once and that was it.
And also how important it is to give back, right? Like, I am always down for a young magician to show me a horrible magic trick. Like, I will watch it intensely, and I'll focus, and I'll give him the feedback that I think they need, or her. But I mean,
but I think it's very important, especially we don't realize, because like doing this podcast from Toronto, I'm from a big city myself as well. We don't realize that some people, they're really by themselves in a city where they don't know anybody. So now the internet comes along, and unfortunately, the internet is not very kind or not very friendly on the outside of magic forums, especially magic forums or things like that, which
YouTube
it's very depressing in sort of the bigger picture, where it doesn't really, you don't see hope, right? You don't see that people actually would want to help you. And this goes for the internet in general. It just is very upsetting as the human race to go into this time period where every opinion is online, and it's nobody helps anybody with anything, and nobody cares about anybody, like and go into magic needs to have somewhere where you can get together and not talk trash, and not just be there for, even if they do something horrible. Well, guess what? Everybody's done something horrible. I probably was, I have tapes of me trying to do card manipulation in my underwear when I was like 12 years old.
Release it.
How many listens do
it's
we
very
need?
That'll go viral.
Totally release it. I gotta find, they're in my grandma's house, and I have the little tapes. So they were little VHS tapes, mini tapes that would go into the recorder, and that mini tape has to go into a bigger VHS tape, right? That takes it, and that has to go into a VCR. So as long as we get those three things together, I'd probably really want to get that material out, because I think it was pretty funny, and I'm better at card manipulation then than I was now, because that was the first thing I learned. I bought Jeff McBride, The Art of Card Manipulation, Volume 1 and 2, and I learned to produce some cards, and it was the best thing ever. It was literally the best thing ever. And so going back to the whole thing is I think it's very important to, and for the lecture and everything, have a community, have a positive and community that can definitely help each other. And this is how you grow. This is how we learn from each other. And I know that sounds very like that, right? But I think ultimately, right, it can be done, because when you get face to face with people, it's more unlikely that they're gonna be like, "Man, you suck," like, right? So going to lectures and
there's nothing I find more.
Going to lectures, that's also important, because I've seen it happen where they go and, "Oh, I didn't know that these people are here." You meet people, right? So lectures are important. Conventions are still important. Magic shops, even though they're dying down. This is how I grew up, so I do feel it's important. I feel that there is a lack of authenticity online, and the genuine, giving back and being for the community and having everybody learn in the right way. I think that's lacking online. So that's the only downside I see of the internet age. Of nobody's really really willing to help you, right? I don't feel. I
Right.
feel
But
that they'll be nice to you on the outside or whatever, but it's different when you're face to face and you go to the lectures or the conventions or whatever, and you could actually show each other things instead of like, I don't know what they do, just send videos back and
yeah,
forth.
I think, on a public scale, I would agree with you, where people are going to be mean in the comments more than nice in the comments. But at the same time, I mean, without the internet, we wouldn't have this podcast, right? Like, we reach out to people personally and get in touch with them on that level, and we build a relationship and a sense of community, which I think is really positive. But I mean, there's nothing I find more frustrating than someone commenting like, "You flashed at 4 minutes and
Yeah.
3 seconds" or whatever. It's like, if you want to tell him that in a private message, so you're not
Plus,
publicly
I'm sure
humiliating
he knows. He knows how the
Yeah.
trick works. So,
But like if I do
him.
it,
Yeah, exactly.
like,
He's
I see
watching
this
the
like all the
video.
time. Like you do a tutorial, right? And it's like, oh, you flash. I was like, yeah, well, it's a tutorial.
Yeah.
But I think that this is something that you put yourself out to anyway when you're out in this world anyway. You have to deal with people saying things like that. It's just the way that you deal with it, right? And there are a lot of things the older generation they don't understand is they just want to show you like the latest packet trick and
Yeah.
or like the one with the bunny and the whatever.
yeah,
It's crazy how it
Yeah.
all
yeah,
evolved, but
absolutely.
we just have to take it in the right direction because it could literally any sort of revolution and any sort of new coming about of anything, you could either go left or right? And a lot of people go
For
towards the
sure.
middle and they're involved in everything, but either you go the right way and you profit as much as possible and learn as much as possible from it, or you can steer the wrong way and it could just be very diluting to everything that you try to do or want to do, you know.
Mhm. There's a few different things that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on before we dive into the next topic. The first, which I think is super interesting, is when you were talking about writing your thoughts on Instagram. And to me, that's incredibly exciting because, people feel that Instagram is a photo platform and a video platform, but, I think putting in the lens of, it's a magazine, it's a content platform, and that you can, if what you are really good at is writing, you're a great writer, then upload a photo that gets some attention and write your blog post on an Instagram description, right? And with stories now, we were chatting with another magician who uploads almost essays to his Instagram stories, and you click through them and you read the essays. So there's so much different opportunities to produce content online. So that was just one thing that I wanted to pass on to the people at home, which is that if you feel like I can't produce videos, I have no place on on Instagram, or I don't have the most beautiful camera in the world, you can produce there. And same thing as YouTube. If you want to put up a discourse on YouTube, that's great. If me, I found that I love to talk, right? So we started a podcast because I don't like what I do on videos. As soon as the camera's on me, I act like a lunatic. So there's so much room online to participate in this magic and be a part of the community. And if you want to write, if you want to make videos, if you want to comment, if you want to make podcast, whatever it is, there's room for you. So I just wanted to very quickly mention that. And the other thing that I wanted to sort of lead into is you mentioned that it's all about online where we take it, and what we do online changes the direction of how things are going. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you seem to be one of those guys who's right in that middle space between magic and cardistry as well, right? It's a very booming community. So I wanted to ask you sort of how that happened, and also what you see different between those communities and cultures online right now.
I think cardistry is amazing. I think it really now it's getting tied into magic because it's a natural evolution of doing a little fancy lapel spread or a one
Mm-hmm.
hand cut, and it's evolved into something what it is now. It's its own community. I don't really think that the two should cross much where and it really depends on your style. So for me, for example, I've been to the first two cardistry cons, the one that was made at MagicCon by the
Mm-hmm.
Buck twins, and it was like just a day, right? It was like half a day,
Mm-hmm.
and they called it cardistry con, and it was really cool because and they pulled me up, right? They're like, who here does not really do any cardistry? And I literally put my hand up because I could do like three flourishes, and I learned one of like the moves from Oliver,
Mm-hmm.
and I love to do it. I love to like practice it and everything. I don't think that it has a a in performing magic, you could either do it one of a few ways. Now you can do it so that the spectators look at you and go, "Wow, you get really fast hands," right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do it in such a way where they sit back and they go, "Well, you didn't do anything," like,
Right.
right? And something happens.
Yeah.
So I'm more of the latter. I'm more of the
too.
thinking of the latter, where I really want them, because if they say to me, "I have fast hands," it's a fail.
I agree.
And it's just my opinion on it, and you don't have to take it as fact. And I say this in my lecture all the time. I go, if people look at me and they go, "Oh, he practiced a lot," and if they think that they could be and do what I do with cards through this magical experience, then it's sort of a fail, because I want them to think I'm on a not a higher level, but a different level where the mystery is still there. There is no mysterious factor in playing the piano, because you know exactly how they're doing it, right? They practiced,
Exactly.
they learned how to do it, and they could do it. Hey, if that person would have practiced for 10 years, they could also play the piano just as good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or solving, like juggling,
Yeah.
or things of this nature, where it's an obvious skill. Now, magic has the ability to have that mystery factor, which a mystery factor is very, very important, because it gives them the sense of, we talk about this all the time, is that childlike wonder and blah 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 blah. All of this is because you need that mystery factor. If there is a possible method to it, whether it be the right method or wrong method,
Mm-hmm.
to me it's a total fail, because then they're just going to be like, "Oh, I want to learn some card tricks."
Yeah.
Right, some tricks. And that word tricks, it really pisses me off, to say the least, because you're here to give them an experience like they haven't experienced anywhere else. So if their Uncle Joe does a card trick, hey, they might have the same reaction that they did with your card trick,
Mm-hmm.
right? How are you standing out? And this is about whether you do want to stand out or not. Whether you want to do something with this craft, with this art form. Do you want to make a difference? Do you want to change people's perception of how they view the world, how they feel? How, if you don't want that, if you just want to show them a few cool card tricks and move about your day, that's fine. But I mean, for me, it's very important to take it to the next level and sit them down. It's about storytelling. It's about the feelings. It's about the
Mm-hmm.
emotions that goes into even something as simple as a double lift, right? I don't care what it is, but do not, do not take it to the next level where you're like, yeah, and then you do some cardistry, flourishes and springs, and be like, yeah, I just practice a lot, and just like, push it off to
Yeah.
that as the explanation, because I don't think that's good. But you can do that. You can do a whole cardistry set, do some card tricks. I just don't think it would have the whole impact. So with that being said, I still think the cardistry community is one of the, I think it's much better than the magic community. Magic communities could be so depressing,
Mm-hmm.
right? The cardistry community is positive. They get together. They want to learn. You watch this cardistry. I try to be on much as possible. I couldn't go to this cardistry con, the one that they had in Los Angeles, but I started watching it like on Instagram lives, right?
Yeah.
And I go, man, like, you don't see magic community like this. You
No.
see the magic industry as, let me show you this trick, and then like keep it to myself,
Yeah.
or like,
You're like someone
I don't know.
releases something, or like you stole it. No, 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 no,
Yeah,
no.
it's just it gets depressing after a while. I've been to magic conventions all over, and it's now I tend to go to the ones that I hang out with my friends, and we
Exactly.
can have a good time, rather than the politics behind it, and people that really are not there for the expansion of the art. So the cardistry community is blossoming, and I think it has such a great future. The kids nowadays are doing things that we can't even touch, right? Like, I
Yeah,
can't
Not
no.
do
even close.
2% of the kind of stuff that they're doing, but it's a different thing,
Right.
right? It's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
It's a more yeah. So I
Artistry
think
is in a weird realm for me because I have I'm not an expert at anything, but I mean, I have an in-depth knowledge of cards in comparison to the average person on the street. Yet when I watch cardistry, I still say to myself, in 10 years I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it does almost have a magical element where like I know it's a skill, but it's still such an impossible skill that it impresses me.
Yeah, I'm really curious because I haven't really dived into this much. But like when you do cardistry for people, like what's their reaction? And I haven't, I've studied in magic, and I've studied doing the same trick, like 5 different variations, and seeing which one is what makes them react. In my opinion, the best, or what feeling it gives off. So I'm really curious if there's ways in cardistry, or if that community is going into that direction, where they care about, like, when you show it to somebody, how you should do it, how you should build. Is it a routine? Is it,
Mhm.
do you talk? Is there patter to it? Is there, do you just do it to music, right? Because like cardistry videos to music could be the
Yeah.
super dope.
Yeah,
um
for sure.
so it's a different realm. So I'm very interested to see how it'll grow in the next few years into being a more mainstream sort of performance kind of art. It'll make it when there's somebody in Vegas doing cardistry on the
When it's
street,
on
right?
America's
And like
Got Talent or whatever.
right, yeah, you
Yeah.
see it on, like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see it grow. And it's one of those things where, like, because magic is so adjacent to it, that magicians have been able to watch it grow without necessarily being in it, And it's cool because we've got an eye on cardistry growing, and making magicians online look like absolute fools by what I like to jokingly call crotch magic on Instagram, right? Where like we're putting so little effort into making something fantastic and consumable, whereas cardists like
They're color correcting and using different
yeah, and
lenses
they're
and
they're
music
making beautiful, exactly. And like someone like Sean O, who we just had on an episode, is a beautiful example of someone who puts a lot of work into the stuff that he releases. And it's just, they're making us magicians look like fools. And I mean that in a good way, and I hope that it inspires magicians to change the way that they act online. Dying, magic forums are dying, right? The same way magic stores are dying. And I don't really have a big problem with strange magic forums dying compared to awesome communities that are being built, right? Like, and I think that that's really a fun direction for magic to go in, and we should seek the same inspiration from as cardists do, with their shareability and with things of that nature, creating great content.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was little and I saw like the hot shot cut,
Mhm.
right, on Daryl's easy to master card
Yeah.
miracles, right? And the opening thing was, and he does the hot shot cut, and I swear to God, I said to myself, once I learn this move, that's it. This is the top of the top.
Right.
Uh, there's nothing more, right? This is like the end all be all.
Yeah, it's like buying a
of,
computer in 2002, right?
You'll never need more than 2 gigs. That's what they said.
So I remember when I was like sort of a layman seeing that, being like,
Mhm.
holy moly, like that's what I gotta get to, and the perception of it. So it's very hard for us to put ourselves in the layman perspective. So
For
like maybe
sure.
they see cardistry and they go, well, this is better than your card trick, right? So I mean, you never know. But I think that as long as there's a community and it's built in the right direction, it'll be we still have the older generation in Magic that sort of pulls it back every once in a while
Mhm.
for us to evolve. But I think over time, and the cardistry community is new, so this is why you see so much exponential growth every year.
Yeah, for sure. And also the fact that, yes, there is, money to be made in the cardistry community, but it doesn't seem to be the main focus. Whereas in Magic, there's a lot there, we're showmen and businessmen. So everyone wants to, make their next buck.
Yeah.
And they're like, keep the secret, don't share it. Whereas cardistry is like, yo, please work on this with me. Make a
Yeah.
variation of this move and post it around. I want this to grow. I believe in this idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all about generations. Like, there's really nothing you can do to, like, talk to the older gen. We're gonna be the same way. I
Exactly.
guarantee
People are
it.
gonna
Yeah.
tell us that
In
we're
years,
whatever.
yeah, they're gonna tell us, and we're gonna have the same mentality.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to like pass through these generations where we're gonna look back and when we're 50, 60, 70 years old, and look back and be like,
you can't do
oh,
magic in VR, and they're like, magic
yeah,
only works
exactly.
in VR. Come on.
So there's a few that was funny. A few quick more things that I want to ask you before we get into the wrap up of the episode. The first is, you seem to be in that sort of middle ground between selling magic and sharing magic for free. So I just wanted to touch on your thoughts on, the teaching of magic on platforms like YouTube, when there's people selling. I mean, even you're selling a trick and you're also teaching the exact same trick for free on a YouTube video. So what's your thoughts on exposure, that sort of exposure? Is it okay that it's open to the world? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, and it's something that I've dealt with for the 7 years that I've run this business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a very hard time in what I release, whether it be on the site, right, versus what I actually perform and what I could back. Now, in the beginning, I only wanted to, and I've had phases where I've only wanted to release things that I would perform good effects, and in the magic community, honestly, I swear to God, the most horrible, useless effects ever that nobody will ever perform are top sellers,
Yeah.
right? So I have this conflict, internal conflict of, so do I put out something that is going to be a bestseller that nobody's going to do it's in my eyes it's a trash effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for you see that people like on the forums and stuff being like, wow, this is amazing, right? They'll never do it.
Yeah.
It'll go into their drawer and they'll never look at it again, right? So do you put out that, or do you put out something that, to me, is a worthwhile effect? It's something that is powerful, strong magic, but maybe it won't be a bestseller, or maybe it won't like hit like turn the magic world upside down. So that's been my internal conflict for releasing YouTube videos. I just feel, and I'm trying to make a structure to it because I'm still a few months into the game, and I want to make a structure where if you're new to magic, you can start learning. You can literally just have this YouTube as a learning, where you learn from, and start from the very beginning and learn all the stuff that you need to learn, that you would do anyway when you go to like places and meet people,
Yeah.
right? So like the type of stuff that like to teach is something that you should already know, where you would go to a convention and learn these things, right? Like a control, like a force.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really doing anything that's out of the ordinary that wouldn't be given for free anyway. I'm just putting it on the platform where people that are in the middle of nowhere, or in
Mm-hmm.
a country where I get messages all the time. There's no magician here. Here, can you come to my country, right? Or
Yeah.
like, um, so
If there's no
this is.
magicians there, then probably not.
Yeah, most likely no. But
Are you inviting me to a date? So it's like you put out the stuff that they should know as a prerequisite to learning better magic and diving into like more theory and more full on routines,
Mm-hmm.
so everything that I try to do is and I have to keep this in mind, that not a lot of people, a lot of people are super beginners, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember what super beginner, like that, just that beginner phase,
Yeah.
knows and doesn't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So sometimes I kind of feel stupid talking to myself in the camera, saying, "And this is what a break is, right? Or
Yeah.
this is how you do this, right?"
yeah.
So just in case you don't know what a riffle force is, so you have to really take it to that, and just realize that you're um, trying to attract people that are interested in magic, right? I'm not really worried about exposing anything, because
Mm-hmm.
my thought on this has been my thought from the very beginning. If you're interested to learn. If you're not interested and you just want to know the secret, well, then you're not going to do anything with that information anyway.
Yeah.
It's not going to, you know, it really is not going to make a
Yeah,
difference. So I
like
think people about moaning about exposure on YouTube and everything, it's really, they really have no backing behind it, right?
yeah, like
Unless,
you do a trick and your audience member says, "I know how you did that. I learned it from so and so." If that hurts your feelings, then you're insecure as a performer. It's like they watched the same tutorial you did, so who cares, right?
yeah,
And
exactly. Unless you're like, putting out, you know, how to do David Copperfield's or David Blaine's tricks or whatever, just on the fact of exposing it. Those kind of things, you're not going to meet those kind of people. I've never had it. I've never ever performed and had someone be like, "Oh, I learned that on YouTube, or I saw
Yeah,
that
I've never
exposed,
had
or
it
something like
either.
that." So
Right.
I think the people watching it are either they truly do want to learn, or they just either want to learn the secret. And if they do want to learn the secret, or they're just layman people out there, they're not gonna, come across my video on the classic force, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
So there's one other section that I want to go through before we dive into the wrap up, and the wrap up is a whole whack of rapid fire questions. But the last thing is, me personally, I'm not wildly into the culture of new decks of cards and stuff. I use bikes. I go through them pretty fast because when I perform, I give them away and stuff like that. But with the exception of one beautiful deck of cards, which are the Nox, my absolute favorite cards in the entire world.
Me too.
They're so beautiful. They're you don't have to be accustomed to a new design. It's almost the absence of design that makes it so beautiful. I mean, there's design, but you know what I mean? Like the absence of swirly birds or like whatever the heck people put on the backs of cards now. So
yeah, phoenixes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just wanted to
Also known as the swirly bird.
the swirly bird.
Also known as the ugliest deck in existence.
So I just wanted to very quickly ask about sort of how that came about. And while I don't have one yet, which I will be getting some soon, I do love the new neon ones as well, because it's to really add even more, style and even more connection to the cards that you're using to beautify it without complicating it. So I just want to ask about how the Nox sort of came to be.
Awesome. Yeah. So, first and foremost, make sure to send me your address. I'll send you a bunch
Oh, baby.
of the
Thank
new
you
ones.
so much.
Definitely. Yeah. I love them just because they're just, you know, they are an everyday deck, and
Yeah.
and when producing the older playing cards, everyone started getting fancier and fancier
Exactly.
with their gold this and their design that, and you really just can't keep up. So I realized really quickly that I should be working on something that they can use day to day, abuse, throw away, and get more.
Mm-hmm.
And I never truly enjoyed the bicycle cards. They put you in the same realm as anybody else,
Yeah.
right? So, and I mean, it's different. Like if you were just to do there's a barbecue going on and you have a deck of cards, oh, bring out the deck of cards and bicycle cards, right? But if you're known to be a magician or whatever, I don't feel that you sort of stand out if you pull out a pack of bikes. So anyway, with that being said, that's just a little opinion of mine. Go into the Nox. The idea first came about when I bought an effect from Michael Murray. It was a mentalism effect. It was called Beyond ESP. I believe that was the name of it.
Yeah,
So
haven't
it
even
was
thought about that effect in like years. Oh my goodness.
so it was an ESP deck broken up, split into two halves. One half was basically what you now know as red Nox, and one was black. They were ESP cards, and they had the marking system and with routines, a booklet with routines, and I thought it was great. With the marking system that you can tell if it's a plus sign, a circle, a wavy line, square, whatever, and you would do mentalism effects with that. So I put one card on top of my whatever deck I had at that point, probably rider back bicycle deck, and I go, wow, this would make a kick-ass deck.
Mm-hmm.
So this was when I was like 13, 14 years old. When I started producing cards, I had this idea still in the back of my mind. So nobody has done it, right? And I was like, how did nobody do this, right? How is there not a deck with just one color? It makes no sense to me. So I go, yo, let's just do it, right? It's going to be stupid, right? This is what I thought in the beginning. It's going to be stupid. But then I thought about it more and more. I was like, how can I brand it, right? So instead of calling it like standard playing cards or
blanks or whatever.
yeah, exactly. So I came up with the name Nox, which is still a mystery to this day of why they're called Nox. And if you ever see me in person, I do tell you why, but it could only work in person. So this is just for anybody listening to the podcast, whoever sees me live, you go up to me and you ask me, hey, what does Nox stand for? And then your response is going to be like, oh my God, that's awesome. So yeah, we did the first run, and ever since then, like they were the most successful cards that we've ever put out. We've done just in the last year, I think over 150,000 decks we've sold in the last year and a half, I would say. And they just continuously I try to, put out as many as I can so they don't go out of stock. I try to keep them at a $5 price tag. That in the U.S. it should be $5. I know people outside of the U.S. sell them for more, just I guess for the shipping and everything. But I keep them at $5-6 max, so that you can use them, abuse them, throw them away, get some more without the thing of, oh my god, I'm paying $10 for a deck of cards,
deck, like what?
or a $15 deck or something like that. That will, people's, that's it. They've collected enough decks. If I put out a $15 deck, it's going to be competing with all the other $10-15 decks where they're going to put on their shelves, and guess what? There's no more room for them. Right? And at the end of the day, I really think the playing card market will get to the point where they literally have no more room for their cards. They realize that they buy 24 decks of each, and they don't have they're never going to use them, right? Because they open up one and they don't want to. Right? They try to sell off the rest or whatever, but it's going to get to a point where people just want a deck to use. So right now, if we think about it, there's the bicycles. Phoenix is popular only because they make relatively okay tricks and effects using only the Phoenix cards, which is a very good strategy, which is something that we've tried to implement also, and we will in the future, where we do a gaff deck and we do a trick deck only using Nox. The black Nox are the most popular ones ever. So I don't know how many decks we sold from the beginning of time till now, but they have been a lot, and they have now become a day-to-day deck. So how it came about really was just a sort of fluke of, hey, nobody's done this yet, I think it'd be cool. And then we've added the marking system. Then we've added the fully one, which I'm the first to admit the fully marked system on the signature series is not the best fully marked system that can be for a deck of cards. Even me, I struggle. I'm like, what the hell is what? But we will. I think this is the first time I'm actually saying this, so it's an exclusive. In the next series after the Knock Originals, the next Knock Originals, or whatever we end up calling them, will be fully marked in an actual, really, in a system that you could actually use. Let's put it that way.
That's exciting.
With the still price tag of the $5, $6, and I'm super into that because we put out the Bicycle Inspires, for example, and they're fully marked, and the lowest price you get that for is like $4.50, right? So sometimes it's the same as a bicycle deck. Depending on where you get it. So it's very important for me to get it out there, and to have this where people are using it, and so they could start to use all the effects and the things that will come out with it and take over really on playing card market, rather than me making a whole bunch of money on a $15 deck, but I sell like 1/10 the amount, right? Not even.
Yeah. It's something it's like a huge testament. Like as soon as the Nox came out, I was instantly in love with them, and they were huge. We used to go to Magic Camp every year. It doesn't run anymore, but it was a huge thing the first year they came out. Everyone was like, oh, you got to get the Nox, And then, as the years go on, they remain my favorite playing cards. And then more and more old schoolers who are like, damn kids and their collectible deck, black tiger, weird, old looking. Those Nox, though, I really like. Those Nox are cool. They're nice and clean and crisp.
I recently met someone at a convention who listened to the podcast, and he goes, by the way, I'm one of those old guys that you keep making fun of. And I was like, oh, so sorry. Didn't mean to make fun of you. Okay, so now we get to the part of the episode which is full of wrap-up questions. A whole bunch of different questions that we'd love for you to answer. We call it rapid fire, but really take your time with them all. So the first is the question of the week. You've got the ears of, my guess is, I don't know, 1 million magicians listening to this episode. So what would you like to ask them? What question do you want the magicians of the world to answer? It could be something like a question where you want to know their thoughts. It could be a question that should be introspective for them. They love to comment. They love to share. What do you want to ask the magicians of the world?
So this is my question. It's very simple. There's 3 words. What's the point?
Beautiful.
All right. So I always try to ask this when talking about any effect, or when they want to come up with their own effect, or perform their own effect. What is the point? What is the point of you doing this? There should be some sort of meaning to it, because then we're just standing on the stage linking 2 rings for no reason and unlinking them.
Right.
You're just literally showing what you can do that they cannot do. So once you take it to the next level and you ask yourself, what's the point? Well, let's put this, feeling towards it, this emotion towards it, your magic and everything that you do really will go up tenfold, I think. So you ask yourself, I ask you guys that, and you ask yourselves, when you do anything, what's the point?
What's the point?
And you'll find some sort of point. You'll find some sort of meaning that will ultimately make what you do better.
I love it. Short and sweet, and a really, really great question. One of the other questions, or one of the other pieces that we have in the wrap up, is the endless chain, which is that if this podcast is going to go on for eternity, we want each guest to recommend another guest. So, is there somebody who we haven't had on, and don't worry, we can edit out all the people who we have had on, that you think would be a fantastic person to interview on the podcast?
Have you had Peter Turner on?
No, we have not.
Peter Turner is literally, I think, my favorite Well, so I mean, in performing, there's a lot of different types of performances, right? And I understand that some of them could be very beautiful on stage, and some of them could be very nice sleight of hand work. But Peter Turner, really, he changed the way that I think of magic, and he does things that I don't necessarily do. He does a lot of mentalism,
Mm-hmm.
but Peter Turner, he can talk and inspire you in ways that I haven't seen another magician do. So my second um, guy would be Tony Chang. I don't know if you had him on.
Yeah, we're literally speaking to him later today, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So Tony Chang does like to go on a lot of tangents on stuff, but
Yeah,
but
we're a
his
little bit
main-
nervous about the Tony Chang one, to be honest.
So he does like to go on a lot of tangents, and sometimes you sit back and you go, "What are you talking about?" But overall, Tony has.
Yeah.
We were
Start
once
with
we were
one
once at a
conversation.
bar. I was with him in New York, and he was like yelling questions at me about something, and I was like, I have no idea what you're asking me at this point. Like, I don't.
So I've known Tony for many years, and he was the first person I actually hung out with in New York and went out for like hang out with magicians, you know. And every Friday night we would go out with magicians, and it was me and Tony that linked up together. And from there, you know, we got a bunch of like 10 people every Friday night. We would go out in New York, and he really taught me the theories and the concepts behind card magic.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of thinking behind things of how to make everything like as smooth as he does
Mm-hmm.
to Tony. So yeah, just I mean, you know, you listen to Tony and you try to get the main point out of it, and then he'll go on for a bit, and you'll be like, what? Yeah, but yeah, okay, but but if not, yeah. So Peter Turner is honestly, he's an inspiration for me. He should be for others, and I think that you should definitely have Peter Turner on. He'll blow your mind.
Awesome. The next section, or next question, sorry, in the series of wrap ups is your magic PSA. So this could be any sort of advice from, hey, stop doing this, to, hey, start doing this. But you have the ears of our audience. So what is it you want to tell to all the magicians listening at home?
Just I think the what I want to say is just take it slower. Take it slower. A lot of people rush through not only learning, they rush through performing, they rush through their pattern, they rush through life in general. I think you got to take a step back, sit back, and think about things a little bit clearer, a little bit slower, and you'll realize they'll have more emphasis in every single thing they do. You know, so instead of trying to do an ambitious card with a card routine with 10 moves, you know, you try to do it with 3 moves, pull it back, and put more emphasis on the smaller things. So take it smaller, put more emphasis on the smaller things. That's my advice to anybody, really.
I think that's beautiful, and I think that, you know,
I'm really happy you brought that up.
yeah, in general, everything that you do, but, you know, particularly magic, each part, one of the things that I want to stress about what you just said is, you know, often in the discussion of how to do these things, how to write a good script, how to make a good effect, it seems like a grueling process. And I always like to remind the audience that it's enjoyable. We like this stuff, you know, like you're supposed to, if you're sitting home going like, how do I write this script? Oh no. And pulling your hair out, of course it'll be terrible. But if you're trying to, you know, connect with those original reasons why you're in magic, and, you know, like now you can inspire that in others, and how can you do it in the best way that you possibly can? And it's fun. It should be fun. And if you're not having fun doing it, then you're doing it wrong. You know, find people to do it with, and find ways to really take it slow and enjoy the process. So I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. The last and final section of the endless questions is a favorite section. So each one of us go through, reflecting on the podcast that we just did and mention a favorite part. People listen to podcasts when they're doing crazy stuff. They're washing the dishes, walking the dog, walking the dishes, washing the dog, whatever. There's a lot of different stuff that people are doing. So if there is one highlight part from the episode, I know for me, really, it was, I liked getting a little bit of that background on the Knox. I thought that was very interesting and fun to play along with, but also, getting the background of your experience in this, producing content and how you started from the ground up. And, a lot of people, they start producing, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but they want everything to come very quickly. And it's always so interesting when you find out, like the Chris Ramseys of the world haven't just been doing this for 2 years, and you're another example, like to hear when you started, you're building your own shoulder mount and you're like figuring it out yourself from the beginning, and you're learning how to do photography and learning how to do videography to get to where you are now, where you scroll through your Instagram feed and you're drooling because they look so beautiful and stuff like that. So that was one of the favorite parts for me, is to just find out how long it obviously took to get to where you are now, and that should be inspiration for others, that instead of starting and being unhappy about the growth, just know that if you never stop, you will get there. People ask what my advice is for university, and I say, join a club and don't leave it, and by fourth year you'll be president, right? And I play that same advice in the magic world, which is like, start doing something and don't stop, and in 5 years, 10 years, like, people will know who you are. Like, you will be good at whatever it is, vlogging, photos, videos, creating effects, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like, don't stop, put 5 years into it, 10 years into it, and you'll get there. So that was one of my favorite parts. Tyler, what was your favorite part of the episode?
It was exactly what you just mentioned, which is the story of him, or you, Alex, making that camera mount, because it rings true for us, where, we've had how many different recording processes for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? How many times we went and bought a new piece of gear and it wasn't exactly what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you learn by doing, and it's a slow process. Like, I personally feel like our podcast has gotten better, not just grown in, viewership and listeners. We've legitimately, gotten better at the recording process and getting
interviewing and
Instagram and stuff like that. So, seeing your success, Alex, and knowing that it all came from hard work and determination, and knowing that we're putting in hard work and we're fairly determined, makes me feel like, this could become something bigger than it already is. And one thing I wanted to mention before I pass this on to you was, I was really happy you brought up your ambitious card, because a few years ago, you were in Toronto and I met you at the Browser's Den of Magic, and I asked you to show me something, and you did your ambitious card routine for me. And it was one of the most surreal experiences, because I wasn't fooled by the method at all. I knew what the moves you were doing, but you were doing them so well that it still felt like magic. Like, I was shaking and emotional, being like, I couldn't practice enough to make my pass as clean as that pass was. There's no way. So I just wanted to bring that up and just say, you're one of those rare instances where, as a, semi-established magician, you still get to feel a real sense of magic. But anyway, Alex, what was your favorite part of the interview?
So thank you very much for the kind words. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate that everybody listening here, listening to what we have to say. And if I could give one thing that I talked about that really should stick in with everybody, it's really the notion of never giving up,
Mm-hmm.
and really driving in and realize, it's important to realize that your thoughts, your theory, the way you think about things will change, but you should never give up that momentum. Yeah, the momentum has to start and never stop.
Mm-hmm.
And you only become a loser if you give up in what you're doing.
Right.
So whether it be starting a magic company, doing a YouTube channel, putting out a deck of cards, I've seen so many attempts of websites, of this, of that, of products that have started and have failed. And it is because you don't have the momentum to keep going, and it's ultimately, I think, is because you don't enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, if you enjoy it and you really think that this is your world, then live in it, breathe in it, 24/7. And I think it's just that instilled factor of on the outside, if you want to do something and be successful, right? And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying right now, because I don't consider myself successful. I don't want to call myself, okay, I'm successful now, I can sit back and relax, because that will never push yourself forward.
Of course.
In the business or in magic, right? Because if I could say now my repertoire is perfect, well, guess what? It's not going to be,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to grow. It's not going to be what it can be, which I feel that it has a lot to grow. My business has a lot to grow. My card magic has a lot to grow. So always know that you're always learning. Learn as much as you can. Never be cocky and arrogant that you know everything. And this is the way that you learn and evolve. And also in talking about card magic and actually the performance of magic, um, I think that the main idea that should stick in your head from this podcast is to just pull everything down, slow it down to its most minimal amount. Ask yourself that vital question: what's the point? And then start layering it on top with
Mm-hmm.
emotions, with feelings, with some sort of story or some sort of
Depth.
point
Yeah.
to the actual thing that you're doing, rather than, look, I'm going to show you something that's going to fool you. I'm going to show you something that you can't do,
Mm-hmm.
because that just creates a barrier, and you want to literally jump on the other side and inspire your spectators, inspire the people that are in front of you. And I think that's the end goal in performing magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. Really slow down, break it down.
Yeah, just listen to that last
Yeah,
15
that's it.
seconds. That was the
That's
whole
really the
thing. That
banger.
was it.
And with that, thank you so much. Very, very glad to have you on. I'm glad that we bumped into each other in New York, jamming with Tony Chang and Ben and I when we were both there. And it's funny when you were mentioning seeing him in Toronto. I was like, how did I miss that? Like, how was I not there? And then I was glad that we saw each other in New York to get this thing happening. So
Yeah, even if it was for a quick drink, but hopefully we see each other again soon.
next
And
time I'm in, you get a call.
100%, 100%, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, big thank you to everybody who has listened to this episode. This should be a reminder that you can work on magic for like an hour and a half without learning any moves. So your pinkies are out of the deck, but you learned something. So thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. Big thank you to you. And we'll see everybody next Thursday.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much, everybody.
Well, I hope you liked it, episode 95. One last thing to tell you, which is there is a contest for this episode. If you share the episode, I don't care where you do it, share it on Instagram, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, as long as you tag at Discourse in Magic and at Blue Crown Magic to make sure that us and Alex knows about it, one of you will win 3 decks of Nox, different colors, so delicious, so amazing, and we will send it to you. So make sure to share the bonanzos out of this episode, and one of you will win some cards. Thank you so much, and see you next Thursday.